Justin Bartha, you play Colin Morello on CBS All Access's The Good Fight, a spin-off from the highly successful The Good Wife. Let's start there. Were you very familiar with The Good Wife, and were you a fan of it?
Well, yeah, I was certainly familiar with it, and the first couple seasons I had watched kind of intermittently, and I always loved that show, especially being an actor that lives in New York. You got to kind of see all of these great theater actors that you kind of hardly ever saw, get really meaty parts. There was always a guest starring role for some of my favorite actors, and then obviously the cast was always amazing. So I was familiar with that, and then I didn't watch the later seasons as much. So when the Kings reached out and said they were doing a spin-off, I thought that it was for just the CBS, for the network. I didn't know initially that it was for this whole new CBS All Access streaming venture. So that was pretty exciting.
And so you're now on a streaming service for CBS, not on the network. And so there are some differences. You notice immediately after watching a few episodes that, they can curse and there's a bit of nudity and the storylines are a little bit more left field. Do you like that flexibility and that free range to be able to kind of cover pretty much whatever you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, that was the main attraction, actually. I mean, to kind of continue from the last question, when I did initially think that it was kind of a spin-off on the CBS network, that wasn't as interesting as when I actually sat down with the Kings and they told me what their new idea was for the show, how it would center around Christine Baranski's character, Diane Lockhart, who she's one of my favorite actresses, which was also a thrill. And then how the ensemble would be a diverse cast because, Diane Lockhart now would work at an all-black firm in Chicago. So I thought that was a really great idea. And then also the Ponzi scheme was also cool. So, when they told me kind of the themes and how they wanted to, do it on CBS All Access, which allows them to kind of flesh out their full vision and not worry about network censorship and really make kind of a darker in tone show. That was what really kind of attracted me, because it's like, what if you had that kind of universe, but it was on a Netflix or Amazon, so you could do the King's Uncut is what we kind of say.
Yeah, I like that, the King's Uncut. And they were saying that kind of thing for years, because The Good Wife, as highly acclaimed as it was, it was very restricted in what it was able to do, and it was on for 22 episodes a season. The cast regularly but commented about how difficult that was. You guys have to do 10 episodes, which is much more manageable. You can then go off and do other things. Did you find that 10 episodes was a more manageable process, given that you've been on network TV before?
Yeah, I mean, I'd always done a half hour. I've done a couple shows before this, and they were always half hours, so it was a little more manageable. But even with half hours, on network, when you do 22 episodes, the writers do scramble to try to kind of fulfill their obligation, and sometimes the quality can wane between some episodes, and it's hard to have an even season. So with this, I think that they, even though it still was a pretty big challenge, especially you're dealing with a big ensemble cast, and you're dealing with themes, not just this kind of all-black law firm, but also the Ponzi scheme, and also police brutality, and you're dealing with politics in a irreverent and current way that is incredibly difficult to tackle on network television, especially when you have certain affiliations that you can't really mix up. So I think that with more freedom kind of comes a little more pressure, maybe, to be able to make the show as the quality as high as some of these other shows on Netflix and other streaming.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, with your character Colin, he you could kind of call him a rising star lawyer in the state's attorney's office, and he's a potential rival / love interest for Lucca Quinn, played by Kush Jumbo. But I think there's probably more to him than meets the eye, and so I'm wondering, like, what was your take on him when you first got the part, and as you then started progressing and kind of exploring his character throughout the season?
Yeah, they so when I first sat down with them, they told me they had a very specific view of a character that they wanted to kind of implant into this universe. So he, they always had the idea that he was he came from a dynastic family in Chicago, and this family was rearing him for political life in some sort. That he was a young U.S. Assistant U.S. attorney, and that he possibly had one thing that we worked on together is kind of what his feelings were towards this. Towards his family and towards kind of the ambitions of his family and himself. So he might be a little, weary of these plans. But they always mention kind of John F. Kennedy Jr. as an archetype of who this guy was, and which always made me a little uncomfortable because there was only, obviously, for many reasons, no one can compare to JFK Jr. So, for me, I really looked at him, but also kind of the Emmanuel brothers and Justin Trudeau, kind of these young, powerful men that have very clear ambitions and try to implement change in their political life, but sometimes hit walls in their personal life and also in their public life and how they intermingle with each other.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good take, actually, and. We do learn more about him when we have the episode at his family home, the massive estate, where we get to meet the actress who plays your mother, Andrea Martin. Talk us through working with her, because that would have been probably a thrill, given you've already mentioned how much you love working with certain New York actors.
Oh my God! I mean, I've always wanted to work with Andrea Martin. I mean, she's a favorite of mine from her SCTV days. I don't know if you've ever seen that Brenda Vaccaro spoof that she did, the tampon spoof. But if you haven't, Google it. It is like the greatest thing ever. She's amazing, and I think the Kings had always kind of wanted to kind of find something for her on The Good Wife or this, obviously. And this was I'm honored that she played my mother. That being said, the family. Obviously is pretty different than the character of Colin, and he has definitely come at odds with them in many aspects. So I think that there's natural conflict there that'll hopefully rear its head in season 2, and you'll get into more of his complicated relationship with his family.
Yeah, and it took me by surprise, because I originally, when you first kind of show up on the show, you think, oh, okay, so you're playing you're taking the mantle, I suppose, from Josh Charles and Matthew Good, the kind of the affable, suave lawyer, male kind of love interest. But you start learning much more about Colin, and you realize that he is from this really amazing, rich, kind of wealthy background. And also you were playing the love interest for Lucca Quinn, but then by the end of the series, you guys are kind of at each other's throats.
Right.
And I'd love to know your thoughts about working with Cushion and the chemistry you have together, and the dynamic going from love interest to rivals.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we first met each other, I think we were always on the same page pretty immediately with how these characters complemented each other and how they differed from each other. And I think that they have similar personalities, and also they're both wildly ambitious characters. And what always really interested me with exploring that relationship in the Kings and Kush was how that ambition mixes with your personal life, and how it can hinder your personal life. Sometimes the lines are blurred with what actually is the personal and the professional. So I think that all of those things play, while at the same time there is a natural and immediate chemistry that they have, because they both use humor to keep people at arm's length. They they both have certain walls up. They try to, play it cool, but they have some hangups, I think, for sure. So the one thing that we talked about with the Kings from the very beginning was kind of keeping, on the surface, keeping it light and kind of almost like a Preston Sturges comedy, having there be a lot of banter. I always kind of thought of the Thomas Crown Affair, how there's this natural sexual chemistry, but it's a chess game, a constant chess game between these two characters that we don't know how it will play out.
And talking hypothetically now, because we are in Emmy season, most actors have to choose their highlight episode from the season if they're lucky enough to be nominated. And a lot of actors get really uncomfortable with this question because they're like, oh, yeah, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to. But let's just pretend, right, for a second that you might be nominated. Do you have a particular highlight episode in mind when you think back to season, you think, yeah, I really, really enjoyed that particular episode for this reason?
I mean, it is a strange question because I in no way think in those terms. But when it comes to fun-wise, I mean, the finale of the show was a lot of fun, just in the way that all the storylines, you see the storylines intermingling and kind of playing off of each other, and you also see, especially with Colin, that complicated relationship between his personal and professional life, how it comes to a head, and you really see how it complicates his life and the lives around him.
Yeah, and I think in the finale especially, although you could pick episodes from earlier in the season where Colin is really kind of likable and funny, but by the end of the season, you can tell that things are really starting to weigh on him, and a lot of stuff's collapsing around him, his career, and his relationship with Lucca. And so, yeah, I would say the finale.
I don't find him that. I tried not to play him too likable when it comes to the beginning of the season. I mean, I actually see it. I see him as kind of a douchebag when it comes to, the first few episodes. I mean, he's well, what I was interested in, because I know a lot of lawyers in New York, and I'm friendly with some very good lawyers that I kind of hung out with before we kind of started the season, just because I wasn't familiar with the whole process. And a lot of these guys are so smart and so confident in a seemingly off-putting way.
Yeah. Because,
the law, when you have the law backing up, and also you spend a lot of time in the courtroom kind of fighting, you have a very strong and specific point of view. So I think what I was trying to do was kind of show that this, it's seemingly this guy was, kind of a cocky, smart dude that, maybe was a playboy, that kind of thing. But then as the season kind of rolls out, you see kind of where that comes from and how he actually is more likable than, when he's always talking about, going down on Lucca in the bathroom. I mean, he's a very confident dude, but, it's interesting I always thought it'd be interesting to see where that confidence comes from.
Yeah.
How, if it's sustainable and what it actually is covering up.
It's funny that you were aiming for that particular, like that douchey vibe, and it's very common in lawyers. I know exactly what you mean. It's that super cocky. It's like, wow, you are so confident, and he really kind of felt comfortable in his skin. And but the reason why he was so likable, to me at least, is because Lucca is so closed off, and she's so impenetrable that I think a character like Colin, the way you were able to draw him out, really was able to get through to her, and so that dynamic between the two of you was really working for a lot of us who are watching the show. So I mean, I think that's where the likability came from. Yeah.
I mean, I think that the one thing that was is that he is, even though he has this that douchiness or that confidence, whatever you call it, I do think that Lucca has that too, and exactly. I know that's to say for a lot of fans of Lucca, but he matched that. Yeah. So it almost was, I was trying to hold a mirror up to Lucca in a sense where, she got, the only way to make her uncomfortable is for her to actually see, look in a mirror and see kind of what she's doing, how she's kind of perceived by maybe other people. So it was trying to kind of it all goes kind of back to this image of the chess game and Thomas Crown Affair to me, where
Yeah.
and relationships can be like that sometimes, unfortunately, especially when you're dealing with smart people that are ambitious.
Exactly, and I think you nailed it. I think that's exactly the right way to put it.
Right.
So before we go, so season 2 is definitely happening, I
Yeah.
hear. So so when is it happening, and can you tell us anything at all about it?
Well, I don't think they've started writing yet, but we will. It's going to be, I think, pretty much the same schedule as this past season. So I think we'll probably start around October filming, and I'm not sure when this one started airing, but I think in the beginning of next year.
Yeah.
And that's, I think that most people will be back, and we'll see how. The one thing I did hear is that it will pick up 1 minute after the finale.
Cool. Okay. Well, we're really looking forward to that. Thank you so much for your time today, Justin. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a pleasure speaking with you.